Welcome to the Inspirational Living Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or to leave us a review at the iTunes Store. Today's reading was edited and adapted from The Power of Thought by Henry Thomas Hamblin, published in 1924. Why is thinking right thoughts so important? It's important because it influences our actions. It's important because it builds up character and a steadfast mind. It's important because upon it our well-being and the success of our whole life depend. It's important because it is by right thought that we can overcome harmful suggestion. First of all, we have to realize that thought is the cause of our actions and decisions. It is largely because of this that our circumstances depend upon our thoughts. If, for instance, we do not overcome life's difficulties in our thoughts, then we can never overcome them in actual experience. By this, I mean that our difficulties must be boldly met and conquered in thought, if ever we are to hope to overcome them in reality. In a way, it is good advice to tell people not to dwell upon their woes, but to think of pleasant things instead. However, it is liable to lead to a habit of thought almost as destructive as brooding over trouble. This negative application of what is meant to be good advice is responsible for the failure of those who say, "I have tried right thinking, but it makes no difference." The reason it makes no difference is that it is not right thinking at all, but actually a form of wrong thinking. Such people say, "I never indulge in wrong thoughts about my troubles. I refuse to think about them." Just so. And it is there where the whole trouble lies. Instead of life's troubles being met boldly and conquered in thought, they run away from them. As soon as the mind comes up against an unpleasant thought, the thought of an irksome duty that must be done, or of a crisis that must be faced, or of a difficulty that has to be overcome, the mind dodges it and moves on to something more pleasant. The person who says, "I never think of my troubles," and who runs away from unpleasant thoughts of this kind, finds that they can never overcome actual difficulties when they arise. In fact, their so-called right thinking prevents them from making decisions, and from dealing firmly and sensibly with the difficulties in their life. The world may be divided into two classes of people. One, those who overcome life, and two, those who are overcome by life. Those who overcome life's difficulties are those who do so in thought. Those who are overcome by life's difficulties are those who do not overcome them in thought. The secret of overcoming is in thought victory. If we continually overcome in our thoughts, we develop a steadfast mind. Without a steadfast mind, it is impossible to be victorious in life's battle. On the other hand, there is no difficulty capable of being solved that cannot be overcome by a steadfast mind. Indeed, if your mind is steadfastly directed towards a certain object, not only will you be truly successful, but the most remarkable things may happen or be achieved, beyond anything that might be hoped for or expected. The mind becomes powerful, growing in strength continually through the meeting of a difficulty in thought, moving forward towards the difficulty in thought, and then putting the weight of the mind and will behind it. Then the whole person moves forward, going right through the difficulty to the other side, victoriously. This generates inward power that is cumulative, which, when we come to the difficulty in actual experience, helps us through it successfully. Now, this is quite different from worrying over things. Worry is a destroyer. By worrying over our troubles, we not only stimulate fear, one of the most destructive of the emotions, but we also wear grooves in the brain, round which our thoughts revolve in endless repetition. The brain becomes so constructed or arranged through the practice of worrying that worry becomes a habit. That is to say, as soon as a thought of some impending trouble comes to us, or something goes wrong in our life or work, or we fear that it may go wrong, immediately the cells used by worry are stimulated into action, being already fully charged with nervous energy. Then goodbye to our peace of mind, goodbye to sleep, and in time, goodbye to health. Some people are of a worrying nature. They inherit it from their parents. Some people, on the other hand, never worry about anything. If they were sentenced to death, they would probably sit down and read a book. If the executioner stood beside them, they would probably say, "Please wait a minute or two until I have finished this chapter." We must not worry about our troubles or imaginary fears, but meet them boldly in thought and will. On no account must we run away from them, for there probably is nothing more negative and destructive than this. Those who refuse to face their difficulties and who keep on dodging the issue are, generally speaking, the greatest of worriers. Avoiding an issue in thought actually increases the trouble, and thus there is more about which to worry. At the risk of repeating myself, I must again point out this most vital and important truth, that we must overcome life's difficulties in thought. The teaching that bids you merely to dismiss your trouble from your mind and think of pleasant things, or to indulge in a daydreaming, can be sometimes positively followed, but as usually applied, it is quite negative. When applied in this negative way, it weakens your will, robs you of initiative, and destroys your power to decide and act. Instead of avoiding the issue whenever the thought of the impending trouble or difficulty rises into consciousness, we should meet it boldly, affirming our ability to overcome it and be victorious. If every time the thought arises, it is met with an affirmation of power, overcoming, and victory, then when the time arrives to meet the difficulty in actual experience, we will find that we have ample power to overcome and go victoriously through the experience. We find ourselves to be steadfast in mind and possessed of a reserve of power that surprises us. Meeting thoughts of failure, difficulty, or fear in this way has an effect upon the subconscious mind. It receives a definite lead and realizes what is expected of it. Being a faithful servant, it does not fail us. These positive affirmations may be of various kinds, and must of necessity vary according to the type of person using them. For some people, no affirmation that is not scriptural and devotional in character can be of any assistance. For others, a religious type of affirmation would not be helpful, but a more psychological form might be useful. Each person must choose the form that appeals to them. One who starts with a psychological form of affirmation may later adopt a religious or devotional one. The form that appeals to you at the present time is the right one for the present time. When a religiously minded person encounters a thought of difficulty, trial, or fear, they can meet it boldly with a counterthought or affirmation, such as, "I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. Therefore I will go right through this trouble in the power of Christ, which is mine to use now and always." At the same time, you could picture yourself going through your difficulty with a strong push, being carried along by an invisible power. In time, a mental habit will be formed of meeting all difficulties and fears mentally with a victorious push. Instead of running away from them in thought, they will be met naturally and habitually by the feeling of this victorious push. The person who does this becomes very strong, steadfast, persevering, persistent, and big in character. Now, if you happen to be a non-religious person, you could use something similar but in a different form. You may meet the thought of trouble or fear by merely repeating the words success, victory, overcoming, while at the same time picturing yourself going through your trouble or difficulty triumphantly, sustained and strengthened by powers you do not understand, but which well up within you. By cultivating this habit of mind, your life will become greatly changed, simply because your character is improving through knowledge and experience. Instead of life's difficulties overwhelming you, you will begin to overcome them. After you achieve each victory, you will find fresh fields to conquer, new and beautiful vistas opening before you. You will find that you can mold and shape your character, and by this means, mold and shape your life. Some people think in the form of mental pictures. The nature of their life and the character of their circumstances depend upon the character of these mental images. Therefore, if they are ones of trouble or failure, they should be reversed into their positive opposite. Those people who are given to negative mental picturing often go through life like this. When they think of the end of the month, they picture themselves as unable to pay their rent and the awful consequences. If they own a business and experience a momentary slow period, they begin to imagine bankruptcy and creditors pounding at their door. If they are an employee, they picture themselves as out of work and homeless. If they see an accident, they picture themselves as a victim, all mangled by the roadside. If they see a hospital, they mentally see themselves as a patient undergoing a fearful operation, or saying goodbye to their weeping relatives as they pass on to a less terrible world. By allowing such mental pictures to occupy their mind, these individuals are more likely to attract the very conditions that they fear and visualize. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that all such negative mental images should be reversed into positive opposites. By doing this, not only are the evil effects of such harmful visualization reduced, but the very opposite states are made more likely in one's experience. If these mental pictures of failure, poverty, disaster, accident, disease, and death are transmuted instead into pictures of success, prosperity, health, protection from danger, and a happy old age, then these desirable states tend to manifest in one's life. in place of the undesirable ones which might have appeared otherwise. For instance, if instead of seeing a mental picture of eviction as a result of not being able to pay the rent or mortgage, a mental picture is persisted in of the rent paid, a comfortable home with no care, then this happy state of affairs is much more likely to manifest than would otherwise be the case. As mental picturing is probably the most powerful form of thinking, I cannot emphasize too strongly the importance of cultivating it in a correct manner. The effect of such cultivation is to bring about a state of positive mindedness that attracts positive outcomes. It also builds up character, making us strong where once we were weak, and able to achieve many things which we were before quite unable to undertake. The Inspirational Living Podcast is a production of The Living Hour. Get the best of our podcast in book form by visiting the website inspirationallifelessons.com. Thanks for listening. I look forward to talking with you next time.